I was honestly very excited for Sonic Superstars because I've always had a love-hate relationship with 2D Sonic. I grew up, I had a Mega Drive plug and play, and I have played a lot of the 2D Sonic games. And while, you know, I enjoyed them, I always thought that they were never even close to what Mario ever did. But then my opinion kind of changed last year when I played Sonic Origins, because it kind of made me appreciate 2D Sonic to a level that I never really did in the past. So of course, coming off the back of that, seeing the trailer for Sonic Superstars got me excited. Now I did get a code through Game Explain, and I've put about 6 or 7 hours into this game, and all I can say is that I'm a bit disappointed. So as a game, Sonic Superstars is kind of what you'd expect from a 2D Sonic game. You're running through large levels, exploring them, trying to find secrets, and in general, I was having fun playing this game, but I think it suffers from a lot of problems, from kind of muddy graphics. The new abilities aren't really implemented very well, and I think the game relies too heavily, especially near the end, on sort of like crazy mechanics that kind of take away from the core loop of, I think, what makes 2D Sonic games really fun. So as I've gone through playing all these 2D Sonic games, I've realized that I've always preferred the first couple of worlds in Sonic games because it mostly focuses on the pure platforming of Sonic, where you're constantly worried about momentum and making the right jumps and exploring these really well-designed levels. And then as the games go on, they start to introduce sort of annoying mechanics like teleportation and warping and air vents that kind of move you around and take control away from you. And I think that's when Sonic is at its weakest. The best implementation from my experience of all them sort of gimmicky mechanics in a level are the sort of casino and pinball levels, because obviously Sonic and pinball go hand in hand. He is a ball, and being able to launch him around the level, while sometimes frustrating, I think works really well. But then in the later games like Sonic 2 and 3, and they all kind of muddy up in my mind of which game had which, like Sonic 2, 3, CD. I know they look different, but I played them all sequentially, so I mean, when it comes to specific mechanics that each level had and each world had, they kind of blend into one. But when you start getting all the other mechanics like warping and air vents and stuff, I think that's when Sonic becomes kind of a bit annoying more than anything. And I think Sonic Superstars suffers from that the most out of my memory, because a lot of gimmicky mechanics in the game, they just simply don't feel good. The first sort of gimmick you come into contact with is that one of the levels is dark and you can only see in a rough circle around you. And because Sonic is so focused on speed and kind of suffers when you're trying to do precision platforming, when you can't see 2 meters in front of you, it gets kind of annoying. It is manageable, and at some points they do sort of, you know, they have rings to show roughly where you need to go. But there are some times in these levels when they're dark that you are kind of making leaps of faith. And later on in the game, I won't show it, but there are harder remix versions of the levels. I won't show it, just I don't want to spoil. And a lot of the platforms in the levels that you can't see, there's a world in particular that has that mechanic. You're jumping on platforms, you know, you're just not sure if they're there. There's bottomless pits, and you have to restart, and it's a slight frustration. And then when you get into the later levels, you have one where it's air based, where you're jumping on air vents, and that mechanic just never feels good because it takes away control from you, and having to jump from an air vent to another air vent just never felt good, and it felt clunky over anything else, really. And then in the later worlds, I think the game has other mechanics. I won't spoil them. I don't want to show off the later worlds. I want to leave them up to you. And I think near the end of my playthrough of this game, I realized, yes, this game is good. It's fine. But I was expecting more. I was hoping this would be the new swan song for sort of 2D Sonic. And it's so good, it looks vibrant, and the levels are designed brilliantly, and the levels look great, but I just don't think it ever reaches that height. It never goes so low that I'm like, oh, I don't want to play this game. But once I beat the game, I was like, I had enough. I don't really want to spend much more time with it. And I think that's a perfect segue onto the new powers. So as you collect Chaos Emeralds in the levels, you unlock these new powers. And some of these powers are cool. One is like turns you into a fireball so that you can launch far. One summons a load of Sonics or whatever character you're playing that run across the screen. And that's used to like wipe out a load of enemies, or it's used to collect collectibles that are out of your way. And then there are other ones that like allow you to climb up waterfalls, or summon a vine that lets you reach a new platform. And in theory, I think these powers are great. And before I say any of this, you can use these powers at any point once you unlock them. And I think in the future, when you give these to people who are like Sonic nuts and want to really, really dive into the game, they'll find a load of skips and, oh, you can beat this level 20 seconds quicker if you use this power up here. But how they're implemented for your average player isn't very good. So firstly, they are optional. If you don't find the Chaos Emeralds, you will never unlock these powers. So they're not like, say, the Wisps in Sonic Colors. You can go through the whole game and never have to use these. And because they are optional, it kind of means that they can't fully commit to developing the levels around these mechanics. So I think because of that, there's just no subtlety in how they are designed. When you get to an area where one of these abilities should be used, the game makes a noise and the icon flashes up down the bottom. And it kind of kills the momentum of what you're doing. Like, you could be running and then all of a sudden, flash, 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 use this ability. And then you stop and then you're like trying to figure out, oh, is this the waterfall I need to climb up? Or should I use the vine to go up here? And it's just not subtle. I think if these abilities weren't optional, then they could have designed the levels around them where they could have some innovative ways of kind of showing you like a design language. Like, you know, something as simple as if you're playing a platformer and you see a coin that's kind of off screen, that usually indicates that there's a platform there that you can jump to, or something, you know, something of that nature. But here, because it's as in your face as, bam, use this ability now. It's not like, oh, I see water over there, that means that I can use my water ability. And while you can do that, the game still just like slaps you over the face with it. And then the other things, like say the vine, for instance, there's no indication, like there's no subtle design language in the level, sort of like, oh, if you kind of see this green plant hanging off here, that kind of means that maybe if you used the vine ability, you'll find something up there. Or you might see, let's say for argument's sake, a breakable wall. That's like, oh, if I see them breakable walls, that means I can use my fireball ability to get up to it to find a secret. But the game just isn't designed that way, and I think that's where it fails most. And as I was saying, since they are optional, you can go the whole game without using them, so then it kind of begs the question, why are they there in the first place? Because it would have been so much cooler if it was fully implemented into the levels. Like, maybe each world they introduce a new ability, and that means that the levels in that world are a tutorial to teach you how to use the ability. The boss fights are pretty standard fare. There's one that stands out in my mind, and it's a clown boss where you have to activate all of these buttons on the level so that you can then deal damage to them. And that was the one that stood out. The final boss, which I won't show, was very difficult, and I did enjoy that challenge. But other than that, like, none of the bosses are great. And to be honest, I don't really think 2D platformer bosses are ever really too great. I mean, Mario gets away with having pretty much the same boss on all the 2D games, and it's fine. So I don't really think it's make or break. One thing that did kind of break the game for me, though, is that the graphics, while at points this game does look good, there are some times when I look at this and the game is just ugly. The backgrounds are pixelated and boring. There's not really much detail in the background. And then in the foreground, some of the textures on platforms and sort of things that are out with a corner of the screen are really, really low quality. Like, at points, this is an exaggeration, of course, but at points this game kind of reminded me of the remake of Klonoa that came out last year, where it's kind of cheap 3D assets that just don't fit in with everything else. Like Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, they all look brilliant. The enemy designs, the boss designs. But sometimes when the boss is coming in from the background into the foreground before a boss fight, I was just examining some of the things. I was like, that just doesn't look good. And I think it's a shame because, well, one of the main things about platformers is their aesthetic. It's one of the things that keeps me coming back to them. It's one of the reasons why I love platformers, because artists are really allowed to do what they want. They're allowed to put in vibrant colors. They're allowed to have wacky enemy designs. They're allowed to have sort of very intricate and fun and vibrant colors on their levels and platforms and everything. But here, there is yeah, there are points where this game looks great. It does. But then there's other times and it's like, I can see that wasn't handled very well. And I think that's a shame. Ultimately, do I think you should buy Sonic Superstars? If you're a massive, massive Sonic fan, I mean, you're going to buy the game regardless, okay? But considering the month that this is coming out, we have Assassin's Creed Mirage, we have Spider-Man, we have Mario Wonder, we have Alan Wake 2. We have loads of games coming out this month. This isn't a must pick up. This is a game that I would recommend that if you are on the fence and you're not a die-hard Sonic fan, wait for a sale. I think it's €60. So if this game is €30 or €40, I could, happily recommend this game. Certainly isn't bad, but it isn't amazing either. I struggle to play any more than simply just beating the game because, yeah, it just didn't really inspire much in me. Like, I'm doing content for Game Explain, and I'm sitting here racking my brain trying to think of stuff to do because, yeah, it's fine. Sonic Superstars is disappointing. It's fine. No better than fine. But I really appreciate you watching. Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe. Tell me what you think about the game in the description, or not in the description, because you can't edit the description, in the comments. Join the Discord. Follow me on Twitter. I'll see you all on the next video.